What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Maxx Nies. Maxx is an LA-based recording artist who just dropped her first single and is about to explode. How do I know this? Because she uses her songs to speak from the heart, to tell a story, and to help herself and the world heal. You see, Maxx was physically, mentally, and sexually abused as a child, and her father allowed it to happen to her. Spending time in and out of therapy, Maxx has finally learned how to cope with the pain and live fully in her purpose through her music. I think you guys will really connect deeply with her and feel her passion throughout this interview. It's really inspiring how she was able to overcome all of that abuse as a child, and she now puts it down on paper as beautiful music to inspire the world, and I think you guys are really going to be inspired to step into your truth. Now, before we dive into it, I wanted to make sure you guys knew about Growth Now apparel. That's right. We have our own merch line, and it's flying off the shelves right now. Thank you so much to you guys who've already grabbed a t-shirt or a mug. And honestly, out of all of them, they're all amazing designs. But right now, the Mindset Over Everything tee is currently the top seller and being worn by people all over the world. So don't miss out on grabbing yours before we run out, because supplies will run out. Head over to growthnowapparel.com and get yours today. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Maxx Nies. Maxx, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. You know, Jonathan George is somebody who came on my podcast 6 months ago at this point. He then spoke at my virtual event, which was supposed to be live, but because of COVID, we went virtual, and we formed a friendship. And you are somebody who works with him. And he told me your story and he told me your background. I'm like, yes, I need to share this message because it's important. But then beyond that, you're really beginning to make an impact with your music. I'm excited to see where it goes, but it really has a deeper meaning. But why don't we start with who is Maxx today, and then we'll break down the backstory.
I've been working with Jonathan for probably around 6 months now, and he's amazing. I love him. And I think he actually has played a huge part in who I am today. Because when I first started working with Jonathan, the reason I kind of started working with him was to figure out who I am as an artist and to bring that whole branding thing into my life. And I didn't realize how lost I was when it came to that. I was like, oh, wait, who am I? Who is Maxx? How does she dress? What does she like? What colors does she like? What's the mood that she is? And I really didn't know. And I kind of did some self-discovering before Jonathan, but it wasn't confident at all. And in working with him in this program, he really was helped me and the rest of the group figure out who we are and what we like and what's our style and what do we look like as a package and as a brand. So my fashion style is very 90s. I love Adidas. That's my favorite brand of all time. I honestly get my inspiration from my uncle who was on The Real World in the 90s. And I rewatched his show recently, and I looked over at him and I was like, do you have those clothes? Because I want your whole wardrobe. And he was like, no, I don't have it. And I literally went on Etsy and bought 90s Adidas sweats and pants and sportswear from a million years ago. But yeah, I've been writing music for seriously writing music for about 2 years now. But when I was little, I wrote songs. I mean, obviously they weren't how they are now, but I've been writing for my whole life, but started taking it seriously in the last like 2 years. And music is basically my whole life. Like I have a very small circle of people that I hang out with, and it's all I really want to do. It's all I want to focus on. So music sums me up pretty much. That's basically all I do with myself.
So I want to dive into that a little bit and talk about when you were younger, dreaming big, right? Like obviously you said you wrote songs when you were younger. This is clearly always a dream of yours. What was it about the music industry and music in general that you're like, that's what I want to do? Was it the stage? Was it the vibe of the music? I mean, obviously it was probably the 90s look that I clearly grew up wearing as well. You made me feel really old in that when you're like, these styles are ancient. But you know, when you break that down, like I love the idea of dreaming big at a young age and then really following through in that vision that you had for yourself. Talk a little bit about that. Like what was the draw?
Yeah, so that's actually like a huge part of my story. My grandma actually brought home a Taylor Swift CD one day, and she was like, you have to listen to this girl. She is so amazing. You'll love her. And I was still am a very stubborn person. And I was like, I'm not listening to her. I don't care. And she was like, no, you have to. Like she convinced me to listen to it. But I think what really turned me off at first was that it was country. And I was like, I don't like country music. And I was like 7 years old. I was just like, no, I like what I like.
So dead set. You're like, no country music for me.
Exactly. Yeah. And then somehow I ended up listening to her, and it was like instantly like fell in love. I was like, oh my God, not only do I love this girl, I want to be her. Like I want everything about her. I want that in my life. And I would like wake up in the morning and just go downstairs and watch like YouTube videos of her, like her music videos and her performing. I was the definition of obsessed with this girl. So, but at the same time, that inspired me so much. Like I started watching her perform in her music videos and seeing her art and her talent and stuff. And I was just so inspired by it. And that got me into this. My obsession of Taylor Swift became this obsession of making my life go in that direction. So I would start like learning how to sing, and I would sing by myself, and then eventually got into lessons at the age of 8 years old. And once I got into lessons, I was like, oh, I'm like capable of actually doing this. And then I had my first performance. And then after that, it was just like, I forced people to come to my living room and watch me do dances and sing these songs and stuff like that. And then I got a little keyboard and I started writing songs. And it was like, I remember my first song was about my great grandma, and she had just passed away, and I wrote this song to her. And then after that, it was about a boy I had a crush on in 4th grade. And it just kind of like kept rolling. And I was just like, I like putting my feelings into music, and it feels good. And people were like impressed. And I don't know, it just became almost like an addiction for me. Like the more I did it, the happier and the better I felt. So I just wanted to do it more and more and more.
I love what you said there, because you talked about it became an obsession, and you started to visualize for yourself what it would be like to be on the stage, to live that type of life. And it was so much more to you than just a dream and a fantasy. You were making it a reality in your head right from the beginning. And then you go, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say like from age, I think at like 7, I was like, this is what I'm doing with my life. Like, I want to be a famous singer. And I made myself my own little, like, name for my band. And, like, I literally just performed everywhere. There was this karaoke night at this restaurant by my house that, like, was pretty much dedicated to, like, drunk 30-year-olds. And then this, like, 8-year-old would, like, drag herself and her little cousin every Friday night and sang, like, Taylor Swift's whole album. Karaoke night, and like people stopped doing it. Like they just like went to go watch me do it, because it was awesome. Like a family, like it was a very close friend kind of restaurant situation. So I was luckily like able to do that, but it became like Friday night. Like that's what Maxx was doing. No doubt. She was at the lake house singing karaoke.
I love it. No, and you know, that's a dedication to you and really what you wanted to do. And now you're living in LA and you're pursuing the passion. But you had mentioned, you know, you started to write songs at a young age that were personal, that really hit your heart, whether it be your great grandmother passing away, or, you know, we laugh at it now, but that boy you were in love with in fourth grade, and all of these other things. And you're like, I love the therapy of putting this down on paper, and to realize that at a young age is really amazing. What did it do for you when you started to write these feelings down? Like, what was it doing to you on the inside? How was it releasing some of that emotion?
Well, honestly, I've never really even thought about that question like the way that you just said it, but it's making me realize that it does the same thing it does for me today. Like my first song about my great grandma, it was a sad time and it was confusing. She's the first person I ever, like, it was the first death in my entire life that I had ever experienced. And so it was confusing for me because I was so young, but I also knew that it was really sad. And I felt the sadness that my family was feeling. And I felt sad because I knew she wasn't here anymore. And when I wrote the song, it was sad. But then after it, it was this happy moment. Like, wow, look what I created. And like, it brought that for everyone. And everyone was like, wow, this song is so sweet and cute. And this little girl just wrote this song for her great grandma. And it was like, it turned this bad, sad, negative moment into like this very happy, like optimistic thing. And that's kind of how I use music now. Like a lot of the things that I write about are not fun, exciting things like that. A lot of it's about mental health and anxiety and depression and abuse and all of that kind of stuff. But I like to write it in a way so that it's not just like this depressing album, you know, like I want people to be able to dance to it. I want people to feel to it. I want people to experience everything, whatever it can bring up for them. I want it to, but I want it to also be able to be on the radio and be able to be popular, you know? So yeah, I kind of added more into that than
no, that's perfect. And, you know, when you look at the album that you've released and now the music video that just came out a couple days ago, the title of the album is Daddy's Issues. And you talk about depression and abuse and all of these things. Can we dive into that a little bit and kind of what you went through as a child that really has brought you to the point now where you can be a voice to this type of thing that so many people go through? Yeah.
So as a kid, it was, I mean, I'm still kind of figuring it all out now. Like I really started to figure out my childhood and put puzzle pieces together around like a little over a year ago. But when I was 9 years old, I started talking about my experiences at my dad's house. So my mom and dad are separated. They were never really like officially together. And my mom has been dedicated to being a mom since the day I was born. And she has been the best mom I could ever imagine to even ask for. Like, I don't even have words to describe how lucky I am to have her in my life. It's ridiculous. But she was the best mom I could ask for. And then my dad, on the other hand, was just not, he honestly was not capable. He wasn't ready. He wasn't capable. He didn't want to have a kid. And it just really showed. He was angry and abusive, emotionally and verbally and physically. But I never really thought about it growing up. I was always just like, okay, mom's house is like this, dad's house is like this. And I just do what I have to do. I'm a kid and they pick me up and drop me off and that's what it is. And then around 9 years old, it was like I started to just explode, you know, like I had been just like dealing with being abused from however young I can remember to age 9. And it was all kinds of abuse. And it was intense. Like, I was sexually abused, I was physically abused, I was mentally abused, I was emotionally abused, verbally, all of it. And at 9, it really just started showing. Like, I stopped eating, I stopped talking, I stopped showering, I stopped going to school, I stopped seeing friends. My everything just shut down at one point. And my mom was like, what is going on with my kid? Like, I mean, from when I was very young, like in my like kid years, from like probably 6, 7, 8, I would have like little temper tantrums and like meltdowns of just like trying to express how much I hated myself. And I would beat myself up and like punch myself. And like, I didn't know why, but I didn't want to be in my body. I didn't like myself at all. And I didn't feel like I was worthy of anything. And then at 9, I shut down, and my mom put me in therapy, and I started telling the therapist about my experience at my dad's house, not even knowing what I was saying. I was just telling her what happened.
Yeah. For you, it was just your reality. You didn't realize that wasn't a healthy reality.
Exactly. Yeah. And then she was like, oh, well, this isn't supposed to go on. And she called my mom and she told her what was going on. And immediately my mom and I moved out of the state to Ohio to live with my aunt, my uncle, and their 4 kids. So it was me, my mom, and my mom's sister and her family. And it was just not working out. Like, it was too many people in one house. At that point, I don't know if you want to call it anorexia or bulimia, whatever. I had a raging eating disorder. I did not want to eat at all. And it wasn't because I wanted to be skinny. That was never, ever it. I had a huge fear of the feeling of food being in my stomach. I like constantly wanted to feel empty for some reason. And if I did have food in my stomach or felt the feeling of fullness, I felt like there were maggots like in my skin crawling in me. It was just like a constant not being able to be in my body. And also along with that, I was showering like 6 times a day at one point. And now I could never feel clean enough, ever. And there were certain places. I also had OCD. So that was also like a thing where I was obsessed with being clean, but this whole showering thing was never satisfying me. Like, I would do OCD rituals about being clean and I'd feel satisfied after I did them for a certain amount of time, but it was like an internal thing. And later I found out that a lot of people who went through sexual abuse feel that way, and they feel like they can never be clean, and they feel like they have things crawling in their skin. And I always used to say, I wish I could just unzip my body and crawl out of it, because it was so uncomfortable to just be with myself.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we moved to Ohio. That wasn't working out. And thank God, my mom got this job offer in LA with a friend that she had known from childhood to be his assistant. And we immediately moved out there. But I was very sick and I was very unhealthy, and kind of just, honestly, I think I was unconsciously trying to die, because I did not want to be on the earth, and I was just like slowly dying. So at one point I was put into a treatment center to get recovered back to health, but they never really looked at why I got to that place. You know, it was all about like, let's just refeed her, get her to a healthy weight.
Yeah. It was more focused on like the physical health.
Yeah. And like the present moment, like they would say, I don't want to say we didn't talk about my anxiety and depression, but I was 12 years old in a rehab center. And when people said, what do you feel like? And I was saying, oh, I'm anxious. I didn't know why. Like, I was just like, oh, it's because I can't eat and I have to eat and I don't want to eat. And like, that's what I thought my anxiety was about. But no one ever was like, what happened to you that made you first start not wanting to eat? You know, like they never touched the root issue. So I gained all of that weight. But then when I got out of the rehab, all of my problems were still there, and all of my trauma was still undealt with. So, I mean, life was definitely better and more free, but it wasn't, if things would still come up and addictions would still come up. I like everything I could use to cope, I grabbed onto it. So that formed unhealthy addictions and coping skills and stuff like that. And a year
now,
and a
do you,
half.
you know, as you talk about these things, I just want to dive into something, because I think a lot of your uncertainty of like, I don't know why I feel this way. You know, I'm just doing these rituals because I don't want to be here. A lot of it, I imagine, comes from the idea that you felt very much alone.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, yeah, this happened to me, but I don't feel like I can openly talk about it all the time. I don't feel like there's other people that understand me. But the reality is, and I'm sure you know this now, the reality is there's countless people on the planet that go through sexual abuse and physical abuse. And like, you know, we didn't get into any details, but like stories of you being locked in rooms where you couldn't even change the television channel or eat certain foods and all these things. Like, it's happening everywhere. And I think just what you're doing, I just want to acknowledge really quick what you're doing by bringing awareness to this and letting people understand that, you know, there are people everywhere that went through this, and there is a high end to this, right? And sometimes the first attempt at healing doesn't work. And that's you guys moving to Ohio. Sometimes the second attempt doesn't work. That's you going into this facility. So what happened after that? Like, you get out, you're like, okay, I feel a little bit better, but I'm still going through all this torment. What happened next?
So after that, it's actually interesting because when I was around 6 years old, my dad had a girlfriend. And one day I was at his house and this woman just walks in the room, and I was like, hi. And she was like, hi, I'm your dad's new girlfriend. Like, what do you want to do today? And I was like, who are you? Like, what do you mean? What do you want to do today? Like, it was just the weirdest situation, but she became my best friend because my dad never like took me out of the house. So this woman like wanted to bring me to like aquariums and the zoo and like all these activities. And I was just like, thank God, like, I'm so happy to like have a friend now here to like actually be doing something. And one day she took me to this horse farm, and I fell in love with horses, and I started taking lessons and became completely addicted to riding horses. And that became like a very big thing for me when I got out of the treatment center, because I had started riding like consistently, and my mom and I bought a horse, and he was my everything. Like, I wasn't in school. I was doing online school. I didn't have any friends. I didn't want to talk to anyone. And this horse became my best friend. I would sit in the stall with him and I would tell him everything. I would get dropped off at the barn in the morning, I don't know, 9 or 10, and I would leave once all the trainers left. Like, I couldn't get enough of being at the barn. And it was like, because all of my problems went away there, I just felt good and peaceful and calm. So when I got out of rehab, that was like a big thing for me to like be around those horses. So I made that my life. And I think that's how I coped as well as I did, because I had that sanity. But then around 2018, that it wasn't doing it for me like how it used to. It became more of like a job, and it was tiring, and it's a lot of work taking care of horses and doing that every day. And it's not just like work, it's like physical work too. So everything about me was tired. And I felt like I wanted to like go get back into music, and that was like calling my name. And my mom was like, okay, well, you have chosen the two most expensive hobbies possible, so you have to choose one now. And I was like, I think I'm going to give music a go. So I got back into lessons and I started writing again. And it was like the same how when I was little, I just became addicted to it. And I then started working with this producer who I've been working with for almost 2 years now. And when we wrote our first song, I was like, oh my God, this could be real. Like I could actually make this a thing. And then I got into school and I started going to school at Musicians Institute. And that was great, but it was definitely like more of a social experience for me. And sure. I always say, like, thank God for COVID in this way, because I was forced to stop going there. And I was forced to really look at myself and my music. And I'm kind of jumping around all over the place here, but in that time, I was working on my music a lot. But in the beginning, I was writing a lot about like boys and just like struggles around relationships. And I was like, ooh, I want to be like this pop fun artist that sings about boys and stuff. Like, this is so much fun. And I still love doing that. But then I started working with my uncle, who is a life coach, a spiritual life coach. And he had me start talking about like going back into that place with my dad and those 9 years that I went through with him and being abused, and how that really had an impact on my life and like how it's affecting me now. And it was very intense work, and there was a lot of tears and crying and letting go. But I literally went from hating myself, every inch of myself, to now I'm in this place of like so happy, and I love myself, and I treat myself with kindness, and I respect myself, and I have different people coming into my life, and I have different relationships, and he basically saved my life. Like he made my life do a whole 360, and like I went from not wanting to be here and like maybe wanting to be here in case like I can write songs or in case my horse needs me. Like I was living for other things and other people, and now I live for myself. Mm-hmm. And after going through that experience with him, that healing journey with him, I started writing about my traumas. And I noticed that in doing that, it was like freeing me from them. And every time I went in to write about something, like each song is written about a different experience or a different feeling or something. That thing that I was writing about has less power over me and doesn't affect me as much as it did before I wrote the song. It's honestly like magic. It's really insane how powerful it is.
Yeah. So there's actually a scientific reason why writing these things down helps the healing process. I want to share that with my audience and the people listening. Is and people who listen to the show know I'm the worst at remembering little statistics and numbers, but it's something along the lines of, if you say something out loud, it's 10,000 neurons in your brain fire off. If you write it down, it's like 50,000 plus. And so it's literally your brain healing itself. And so, you know, my mom had a 20-year opioid addiction that ended up taking her life. And my mom was my best friend. Like, she was a great mom, just couldn't handle her own stuff. And after she had passed away, I didn't realize this for a number of years, but I held resentment and anger, even though I loved her dearly. And the therapist that I went to made me write her letters and set them on fire. And just the act of writing my feelings down and then setting them on fire was huge. But here's another thing that I say, and this is what's going to get us to the next part of this conversation, is I'm a big believer that our wounds that we have to endure in life are there for us to learn. And our scars are to teach other people. And so you're now in a moment where you've healed and your scars have formed, and that's just the reality of your life. And now it's your turn to share your message with the world, and you're doing it through pop music. And I love the fact that you're like, I still want it to be dancey and poppy, but real. And I want the words to truly come out. And so let's talk a little bit about that. Like you said, you have all these other songs that you wrote too. Why is it these ones that you're like, let me release them to the world?
So I actually love that question, because when I first started this journey, I was like, I knew that this one song that will be coming out soon is going to be my first single, because it's fun, it's poppy. I played it to my whole family. They were like, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And then I wrote this song that I just put out, No Good at Love. And I fell in love with it. And it's funny because out of all of my songs, that song's about sexual abuse. And that's my like biggest trauma, but that's my favorite song out of my whole album. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Messages are on. But yeah, so that's like my favorite song, but also my scariest experience in my whole life. And I look at that song now and I'm like, this is so powerful. Like and I love it so much. I just had like this amazing connection with it. And when I wrote that, I was like, this is it. People need to hear this. People need to feel this. People need to hear this message. And Jonathan really helped me with the whole idea of bringing the mental health community into it. Because before I started working with Jonathan, I didn't even think about that. But I can really help so many people through spreading awareness around this topic, because not a lot of people want to like think about talking about it. You know, like you don't just walk up to someone and introduce yourself and then list your traumas, you know, but like I
do, by the way.
I do that now. And some people might think I'm crazy and some people might not, but I do that because it doesn't have to be this huge thing, you know, like you don't have to give it that much power. And yes, it's very big and it's emotional and it takes a toll on you, but if you give it that much power, it's gonna have that much power over you. And the more you start talking about it and treating it like it's not that strong and it doesn't take over me the way that it used to, you start believing that and your body and your brain start feeling that way too. Yeah. So I want to put out songs that are super open, and I want to do things like this that are super open so that people feel comfortable expressing themselves. Because so many people, including myself, I've done this almost my whole life, have suppressed my emotions and just ignored myself just to get by, you know, but all you have to do is kind of step over that line of that scary spot. And then once you're over it, you're so powerful and you're so much bigger than what happened.
Yeah. There's so much power in what you just said there. Like to understand at a young age, I mean, what you're 20, right?
Yes. I just turned 20.
Yeah. So to understand that type of power at the age of 20, to understand that the things we go through in our life are just things we went through. They're not who we are. They don't define us. And like you said, if you give it that power, they will define you.
Yeah.
It took me a lot longer to figure that out in my life. So kudos to you. And obviously, you know, working with your uncle and whoever else that you've worked with now to really work through that. That's huge. So one question I normally ask people is, what's your definition of success, and what are 3 things every day you do to ensure that success for yourself? But I want to change it a little bit with you. I do want to ask you your definition of success, because I want to know what you're chasing. I want to know what your big goals are, what your big vision is. But to change it up a little bit, is what are some routines that you've instilled in your life to help you continue to heal through the trauma that you've gone through? And I imagine you've worked on some of those things with your uncle or whoever else.
Yeah. So the things that I do now in my life, I swear like a year ago, I would have like slapped someone across the face if they told me to do these things. Like I was so turned off by them, like didn't believe in any of it. Meditation is a thing that I don't do this every single day. I was at one point, I have to get back into it, but I think meditation is very important. And that's because it gives you the ability to be comfortable with yourself. It gives you the ability to sit with yourself, and it forces you to do that. Like at first, for me, it was miserable. Like I could not do it for a good amount of time, sitting with myself in silence and being comfortable. And then eventually I got up to like over 30 minutes of being able to be in a quiet meditation, just sitting with myself in silence. And that's taught me to be comfortable with myself and to love myself. I also say affirmations to myself every day. And I know that a lot of people don't believe in those things, but I went from despising myself to loving myself. And I've been saying these affirmations every day about self-love, self-respect, healing, even like bringing in success and believing in myself and letting go of the past and forgiving people. That has all, like, I've been saying that I forgive people. I love myself. I am successful to myself every single day for a good amount of time, almost a year now. And I believe those things now. Also, I'm not super religious. I'm more spiritual and I'm more open-minded when it comes to that kind of stuff. But praying, whatever you connect with, it doesn't even have to be like a thing. Just putting it out into the universe is kind of what I do. And like my angels and whatever, I like to have someone to talk to. And I like to be able to send out some prayers and wishes and have it come back to me in whatever way that it can. And that's really helped me too. Grounding myself and like finding my spirituality, that has been a big thing for me.
I love it. I love it. So Max, before I ask you the final question, let's get to the good stuff. How do people find you? How do they find your music? How do they find the new music video that just came out a couple of days ago? Tell us all the good stuff.
Yeah. So my Instagram is @max.nies. I have a Facebook page that's under Maxx, MAXX. On Spotify and all music platforms, I'm under Maxx, MAXX. My song is called No Good at Love. You can find it on all platforms, for sure, on Spotify, Apple Music, all of that. And in my Instagram bio link, it is a link to all of my social media and all of my my Spotify link. So yeah, I'm all over the place.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. So like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, the question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
I think so. I feel like I have a lot, but honestly, the biggest one that comes to my mind right now is, and I didn't even mention this, which I probably should have, but after 10 years of not cutting off all communication from my dad, because when I first stopped seeing him, I still tried reaching out to him and asking him to like be a dad and let's work things out and talk, and like we could go to therapy together. I wanted him to be my dad. And he was just like, no, everything you said is a lie. Everything that you are doing right now, you're just a liar. Like, he was like, your mom's brainwashing you. She did all this weird stuff to you. Like, it's your mom. Your mom's the problem. And I was like, oh my God, you're going to make me crazy. And he did at one point. Like, I had been told that I was being a liar for so many years that I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to lose my mind, because if I'm lying about all these things, why do I have all these problems? You know? So, and like, where are these memories coming from? And like, what do you mean? Anyway, I finally came to this place where I had to say to myself, like, he's hurt and he's crazy. And he has also been through a lot of abuse and awful things, and he has not dealt with it. So we have to feel sorry for him. And I stopped talking to him. And this last summer, I decided, me and my mom went back to New Jersey to visit family, and I decided to go to his house and knock on his door and tell him in person that I forgive him and I love him, and I want to let go of what has happened between us and forgive him. And for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes, and he hugged me and he apologized for what I had experienced there. And it was a huge thing for me. That really like made me look at myself and say, wow, you did that. You are amazing. You went through all of this stuff, and you're so strong and you're so brave that you went up to. Last year, if you brought up his name, I would have started shaking. I was scared he was going to like come kidnap me and hurt me. Like I was scared of this man a year ago. And just a couple months ago, I went to his house and hugged him. And he even wanted to like have a relationship with me. And I told him that I would think about it, and I don't know if I'm ready to let him back in. because I just got to such a great place with myself. But that was probably the biggest thing for me. That's my biggest growth, I think.
Yeah, that's huge. Maxx, thank you so much for sharing your story and coming on the podcast and chatting with my audience for the last 45 minutes or so. But more importantly, thank you for doing the work you need to do to heal and then turning those scars into lessons for other people. I think that is priceless. And so thank you so much for being you and doing what you do. This conversation has been phenomenal. I can't wait to see what happens with your music. Really, really excited about it. But this conversation was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was seriously, this is a dream come true. Just weeks ago, I was like, I want to be on podcasts. I want to tell my story. I want to share everything. And then all of a sudden this happened. And it was just like, oh my God, my whole dream just happened.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week.